We don't really know where the world is gonna go. But now everybody knows that you can't stop for too long. Got to keep.
The first step in generating wealth is to pay yourself first.
But now everybody knows.
Stay tuned.
Stay protected.
Stay focused.
Stay connected.
There's a lot of different types of HELOC products that are now on the market, some of them geared towards velocity banking, and that's really good news.
This is probably the largest asset you will ever have in your life.
Right.
Here's some direction and some instruction on how to leverage this vehicle so that you can help yourself, help your family, accomplish your goals. We're not educated that way.
We use a strategy to pay off our home in 4 years.
Validation of your retirement account says what you thought was a retirement account is no longer one.
When I tell you, you're going to be shocked to learn. If you didn't come from a wealthy family,
You can make sure a wealthy family comes from you. So it starts with pay yourself first today,
Yeah, starting today.
right now. Put your money in somewhere secure. It's about the ability to not lose. I will take base hits all day long versus winning and losing. Somewhere secure, compound your money, and then you leverage OPM, other people's money, to exponentially grow it. That's how you generate wealth.
So whether you're joining us to crush debt or build wealth, time is the most valuable asset.
and we're so grateful that you're spending your time here with us.
Got to keep going.
Welcome. Good evening. Get in here. Hello to all the people already in the chat. We love to see that. Sequia, Nathan, K-Pope, Veronica, saw her in there too. Welcome.
Hello.
Tonight, we're talking about something that is a complete misconception. It's a big buzzword, but did you know that only 3% of policyholders even use this? And we're talking about infinite banking. Which product is best?
Right.
Which product should you use? Which product will help you to build wealth, gain leverage? Let's do a side-by-side comparison this evening. Well, Donnell's going to do it. We know that.
See, here's the thing. My objective is just to try to reframe the conversation, because it's not that I really don't want to say, your baby's ugly. That is not the objective here.
Wow.
But the consistent theme is I can only do this strategy this way.
Right.
And that's not true. So what I would prefer just reframe the perspective. Instead of saying you can't do this, I would much rather have the discussion on how would it be possible? What are the things that we can do as a collective, as an insurance community, to come together to figure out how we can make this process better versus because I sell this, you have to do this way. And that's the part that irritates me. So my objective tonight is to hopefully reframe the conversation and give you maybe some tips, some tricks, to some pieces of the equation to add when you run into the individual who says, you can only do this thing this way. Maybe I'll arm you with some better questions to ask.
Well, I think that's really the point, is that everyone is wanting to feel like they're making educated decisions, but it's really difficult when you're getting conflicting information out there and you are trying to educate yourself. You're trying to become self-directed, right? In your journey to feel confident about the decisions that you're making so that you can ensure that you have this outcome. And that's really what this comes down to, is how this conversation was sparked. Right. It was sparked in the comments. It was sparked in DMs or messages or emails that were sent to us. We love it when you guys send us things that are seemingly confusing to you. And we understand why this would be confusing. Best thing we can do is just peel the layers back. Right. And let's just discuss what are the facts? What are the components behind this? And also maybe where some of the information is coming from. I think one of my, while people are getting in here, I'll just share this part. One of the things that constantly comes up for me is just because something has been done like this for a long time does not necessarily mean that we have to continue doing it in this way.
Mortgages.
Right. Well,
Traditional retirement account.
but a lot of these traditional vehicles come from traditional advice. They come from books that were written decades ago. They were written based off of strategies that were done decades before that. And if it's the
Go ahead.
It's the age old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But that also goes to, that's also applied to certain concepts. Marriages, for instance. People will say that, well, I'm going to go there for just a moment. Just stay with me. People will say that marriages lasted longer back in the 50s, back in the 60s or 70s, right? And when they learn how the rights women did not have, they could not get their own loans, they could not get their own mortgages, they could not get these incomes that men could get. They did not have the same opportunities. So was it that marriages lasted longer, or was it just simply that they had no choice but to stay?
Hostages.
Could be, but the point is, if they had other options, would things have had to change in order for those conditions to then be qualified as marriages lasted longer, right?
Yeah, that's fair. And that's where it goes back to reframing the discussion. So it's not you can't do something or you shouldn't do something, or because my grandfather had this approach, this is the approach that I'm going to have. It's let's ask better questions so that we can get to better solutions.
Yeah. And what I really appreciate for anyone who's tuning in, one, put a Q in front of your question. If it pops up while he's talking about it, just throw it out there and we'll flag it so that we can address it during the Q&A portion of this live stream. We love to know what your questions are, and it's okay if you're pushing back. Like, that's welcome. Go ahead, put it in there. We can't learn if we're just holding back and we're wondering things, and that prevents us from being able to feel confident about the decisions that we're making and the information that we're receiving, right? So anything else you want to share with them?
No, I'm ready to jump in because I think everything that I want to say, I'm about to say as we walk through these details.
Yeah, and we know how you guys love to sit through us saying things twice. So we are definitely doing better to try to button up the length of the live streams, leave more for the Q&A if that's what somebody wants, but also consider the replay viewers. So hopefully you are seeing those changes and they're welcome. So you ready to jump in?
Right.
Okay, yeah, you know the game. He's got to beat the transition over to the vibe board. Ready?
Let's do it.
All right, here you go. No, wait, hold on.
1, 2, 3.
The goal should be, where can I achieve exponential growth? Exponential growth.
Let's just get into it. Let's just get into it.
And volume-wise, we good on
Yep.
sound and everything?
Yep.
So again, my objective today is to reframe the conversation. I am not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but I think as I walk through this, the answer is pretty clear, because I think we all want the same objective. And the objective is we want to put ourselves in a position where we can have control over our dollar so that we can hit our WTF moment. So what we're talking about today is absolutely infinite banking, whole life compared to an IUL. And let me kind of preface this a little bit. This was prompted because received a video from one of you guys related to, hey, can you scrub through to this point in the video where there was a statement being made, and I'll kind of get into what that statement was. And it was, would you mind doing a answer video to that question? Well, here's the thing. What he sent me, the video he sent me, and the question that he had, I get daily, if not multiple times throughout the day. And so what we want to do is kind of understand, if as it relates to infinite banking, where does whole life and an IUL compare? And remember, the objective is it's a strategy designed to take control. That's really what we're talking about here. And this is just a few of some of the questions I received. One of the biggest one is, and I hear Sequoia in my head, because one of the major
Like
ones
daily.
I hear is, I say these acronyms and I say these things because I feel like I'm talking to family. I feel like I'm talking to people who have been with us from the beginning. So in my mind, I don't want to repeat myself because you've heard this multiple times, when in truth, there are hundreds, if not thousands of you who have not. And so therefore, one of the biggest ones is, what is a SKIA? So we'll dig into that. In this video that I had watched that one of you guys had sent to me was, I was sold, when I got my life insurance based product, I was sold on the concept of infinite banking, but the tool that I had didn't actually provide me the strategy that I needed. I was not able to fully be able to do infinite banking. And it was a gentleman who had received I think it was a VUL, a variable universal life insurance policy. We're not going to jump into VULs, but the issue is still the same. I've got this life insurance based product that I was supposed to be able to do this concept, and for whatever reason, I can't. And One of the biggest ones is all you're doing is dumping a whole lot of money into a life insurance policy, and therefore that's why you're able to do and you leverage the dollar amount inside of the policy the way you are. And so we're going to dig into what hyperfunding is or isn't. And IUL, and this one was interesting to me because I think it's almost like the telephone game. The exact question is the IUL is the rich man's Roth, so it's not for me because I don't have enough dollars. I don't have enough liquidity to be able to fund a policy like this. And so as much as I see the value in a product like this, it's just not for me because it's meant for someone better than me. And that is absolutely not true. And this is the one that I want to kind of dig into today. And that is, you cannot do infinite banking with an IUL for whatever the reason. In this case, it says because your policy will explode. And again, I go back to, I just wish we could reframe the question and just go, can you? Can you do infinite banking using an IUL? And that now forces the individual that you're talking to, the person that's going to design this life insurance based product, to prove whether or not you can. Not you can't, and I said so because I'm the authority on this subject. No, it's not that you can't because Nelson Nash said you couldn't. It's, can you? What are the conditions required in order for an IUL to allow you to do infinite banking? It's a simple question. And then we dig into what those actions need to be. But let's start with, what is infinite banking? And again, I have Sequoia in my head because this is one of those slides where I didn't create it, my wife did. I would have blown right through. I know everyone already knows what infinite banking is, so I would have just moved on. But I think it's very important to just kind of highlight, what is the infinite banking concept? What is it? Well, at its root, it's what it says, infinite banking. The objective is to create a banking system using cash value life insurance policy so that you can leverage your money to be able to, whether it's build and generate wealth, or whether it's able to put you in a position to be able to just simply have control over those dollars. So at the root, it's a banking system, but at its core, it's just a strategy. It's a strategy applied to a life insurance policy. Why is that important? Well, a lot of people think you can buy an infinite banking policy. You can't. It doesn't exist. And as a matter of fact, a lot of, if not most, I'm going to say a lot of life insurance companies frown upon infinite banking in general. So they don't offer, there's no such thing as an infinite banking life insurance policy, because infinite banking is a strategy applied to a life insurance policy. In addition, the goal of that infinite banking policy, or the goal of the infinite banking strategy applied to a life insurance policy, is so that you have control. Control to do what? Banking functions. And what are the banking functions? How do banks make their money? Banks make nothing. How do most banks make their money? They make their money off a spread, off arbitrage, meaning you deposit your dollars into their system, and then they lend your dollars right back to you at a rate, and they create this spread on your money, and then it compounds. So the objective is, well, if that's what banks do with my money, how can I put myself in a position so I can do the same? Can we agree that if we're going to become a bank, the objective is to have a positive spread? The objective is to make money in this system. So if you are doing infinite banking, and if you are putting money into this system, and this system isn't creating a positive spread, are you actually being a bank? Or better yet, a better question would be, what bank do you know is successful without having or creating a positive spread? So the moral of the story is, it's a strategy that gives you control to do banking functions. And one piece that isn't talked about enough is the reason cash value life insurance policies are used for infinite banking is because of the protection it provides. Because again, what are you buying when you buy a policy that is designed for infinite banking? You're buying a life insurance product. You're buying life insurance. So if something happens to you, there's a death benefit that pays out. So there's a secondary benefit from you being able to create this system that gives you control to do banking functions. It protects you and it protects your family and it protects your assets. So that financial protection is key. But what's the goal? The goal of this system is to hopefully build a long-term system that can generate wealth. We're not doing this because we have no other purpose. The purpose of infinite banking, I would hope, is to put yourself in a position where you can create a system to help you generate and build wealth. And I don't care whether that wealth is liquidity or cash or buying external assets. The bottom line is the goal is to grow and build so that you can have more than what you have today. Otherwise, why wouldn't we just put it in the normal banking system or put it in the market? So the objective is to securely grow your money and hopefully build wealth over time. In essence, this is what infinite banking is. The key piece to remember, though, it is just a strategy. You cannot buy an infinite banking policy from anywhere. You can only buy a cash value life insurance product that is designed for this strategy. And let's kind of dig into the life of life insurance. So, and I'll drill in here, but this is just basically a basic timeline. In essence, whole life started or was generated around somewhere in the 1940s is where whole life policies came into existence. And it took a while, but from that 1940 period till around 1980, that's when the infinite banking concept started. And it was started by, well, the book on infinite banking was written by Nelson Nash. Most people don't know this, but that book was actually written in 2000. So meaning this actually started, the usage of whole life policies for infinite banking started in the 1980s, but the book wasn't written until 2000. The reason I want to draw this distinction is because when did IULs come about? IULs came about in 1997. This book was written, the Become Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash in 2000. So the IUL itself hadn't been around for more than 3 years when this book was written. So is it possible that when this book was written, this, I'll call it new design of a life insurance policy did not have the proper structure required for you to be able to do infinite banking? So why would it have been I'll call it a go-to for those who were implementing this strategy? So it doesn't mean that IULs are not or will never be. It's just that at this time, it was probably too fresh and new. There's nothing wrong with that.
But also, why didn't he write it earlier? If he just wanted to get the information out, why gatekeep for a couple decades? You know what I mean?
I'm a lot of things, but I cannot get into Nelson Nash's head as to why, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think the piece that gets me is when I get feedback on infinite banking and people like to tout their credentials around being a part of the Nelson Nash Institute, I usually throw one piece back at them. Yes, Nelson created this book in 2000, and in 2000, the idea behind infinite banking is it has to be done with a whole life policy. Okay, cool. But if you actually read the book, there's a piece in the book where it talks about arrival syndrome. And this isn't me. I didn't come up with this. Nelson Nash, in his own book, states that one of the concerns that they have is if we think we've arrived, if we think we know everything, then we have this arrival syndrome, which ultimately means, well, I guess I have that here too. What does that even mean? When we talk about arrival syndrome, it's if you believe you've arrived at success or financial freedom or whatever it might be, you give yourself permission to stop trying. Meaning, if infinite banking is the end all be all, and infinite banking started with the usage of a whole life policy, if we don't allow ourselves to evolve and allow the tools to evolve, we can get ourselves in a position to where we just simply stop trying. And this is my issue when it comes to those who say whole life is the only way. My question is it possible that we could structure something else? I don't care what else it is, but is it possible something else can be structured such that it actually meets the criteria of everything associated with this process? Or have we hit the ceiling of arrival syndrome? And again, it's not for me to determine. The piece that I want you to wrap your arms around is Just because infinite banking is designed around a whole life policy doesn't mean it ends there. And I didn't say that. This is straight out of Nelson Nash's book. Be careful of arrival syndrome. So there's a lot that I talk about as it relates to properly structured cash value life insurance product. And one of the biggest pieces is I talk heavily about SKIAs. So what is a SKIA? SKIA just simply stands for Secure Compound Interest Account. And to me, I believe it's a made-up word. I don't know that it ever existed before we kind of start talking about this in general, how to use life insurance policies. But a secure compound interest account for me means many different things. It is not just one thing. Types of SKIAs. Whole life policy, structured correctly, can be a secure compound interest producing vehicle, a secure compound interest account. What do I mean by secure? I mean that as you contribute your money into it, there is some type of contractual guarantee that the money that you've contributed into it can't be lost. Does it produce compound interest? What does compound interest mean? Is your money making money? And is the money that your money makes have the opportunity to make more? So is it a vehicle that you can contribute your dollars into and build compound interest over time? So a whole life insurance policy absolutely fits in that. If you structure an IUL correctly, it absolutely fits in that. Fixed indexed annuities. We don't talk enough about them, but fixed index annuities are also SKIAs, secure compound interest account. I focus heavy on leveraged IULs, and we're going to kind of dig more into leveraged IULs today. But what's missing from this list though? Like this isn't the end all. As I mentioned, it is just a strategy. Meaning infinite banking is just a strategy. A SKIA is a type of vehicle that can securely grow your funds. So how about a savings account? How about a high yield savings account? Like there are many different SKIAs. Again, it's all about security. Is your money secure? Is there any risk of you losing the dollars that you've contributed to it? Can you build compound interest? And notice, I didn't put a percentage on it. I didn't say, can you build compound interest at a specific interest rate? Your savings account with your favorite banking institution that's providing you 0.01% interest on the dollar that you're putting in it, that's actually a compound interest producing vehicle. I would consider that a SKIA. It's just not efficient, but it is a SKIA. And so again, the key piece around this is your money grows securely without risk of market loss. Meaning, with everything we're going through in the midst of this, the turmoil in the market today, where's your money sitting and is it secure? Is it at risk of whatever's happening as it relates to tariffs or anything else politically? And when I talk about a leveraged IUL, what specifically do I mean? What is this leveraged IUL that I am referencing? Well, again, this leveraged IUL that I'm referencing is a secure compound interest account. And what I'm saying is a life insurance-based product that is simply designed to produce supplemental income. Hard stop. It's a life insurance-based product designed to produce supplemental income. So structure matters. What is that structure? We go over it all the time. That structure looks like this. It first starts with who you get the policy from. What company is providing this leveraged IUL? Not every life insurance company designs life insurance-based products to benefit you. So you would want a life insurance company that provides a product that meets the criteria necessary so that you can achieve the greatest return. The agent, who is structuring this for you? Does the agent understand how to build the right life insurance-based product? Whether it's a whole life IUL doesn't matter. Does the agent understand what he's doing? What questions do you ask that agent to determine whether or not they know what they're talking about? And then policy structure. It is all about policy structure. There's very little you can do with an IUL or a whole life policy if it's structured incorrectly. And what does that structure look like? We're talking about a max funded, option B, IUL with leverage. Again, max funded, option B, IUL with leverage. What do I mean? Well, max funded is saying, am I purchasing the least amount of life insurance legally possible? Again, what does that mean though? That means that I want to make sure that the dollar amount that I'm contributing into this policy is buying as little life insurance as possible. And if you think about it, That sounds pretty weird coming from someone who is selling you a life insurance policy. Think about it. If my job is to sell you life insurance, would you think my job is to sell you the least amount or as much as possible? Because can we agree? The more life insurance I sell you as a person selling life insurance, the more I sell, the bigger my commission, the more money I make, the more money the life insurance company makes. So if the number one factor in making sure you have a properly structured life insurance based product is we need to buy the least amount legally possible. That's where it goes back to the life insurance company you work with, the agent that builds it. It's important because it has to be designed max funded. Option B, and this is kind of a misnomer. It's option B for a while and then it transitions to option A. But still, what does option B mean? Option B is saying, as I contribute to this policy, I want my death benefit to continue increasing. And as my death benefit increases, because it's increasing based off the cash value that I'm building in my policy, that means my cash value is growing as well. So I want an option B policy so that I can have access to the cash value that I'm contributing into this policy. And it has to be an IUL. Why do we use an IUL? Why for a leveraged IUL and applying a strategy to that leveraged IUL? Why do we use an IUL and not whole life or not some other type of tool? Well, it's because, one, the IUL we use allows for leverage. Ask whoever's building your whole life policy, does the whole life policy allow you to add leverage into the policy as brand new premium? Simple yes or no question. In most cases, the answer is going to be no. There are very few life insurance companies who allow this. So we use the IUL for that reason, number one. Number two, it's because of the security piece. IULs have this unique feature called a 0% floor. What that means is it's a contractual guarantee from the life insurance company, not from me, that says any dollar you place into this product cannot be lost due to market risk. So that security is the reason why this tool is used. And the last piece is leverage, usage of other people's money. The ability to add someone else's dollar into your policy to allow it to grow efficiently. And in doing so, what that structure ultimately is providing for you. Oh, you know what? There we go. It won't let me do it. No,
Well,
we're fine.
while we're waiting, we'll just little
There
PS
we go.
public service announcement from Sequia in the chat. If you could hit the like button,
I like that.
we'd love it. Yeah, thank you, Sequia.
So what this policy structure is giving you, or what it provides for you, is the ability to generate growth, have security over the dollar amount that you're contributing, and use it as leverage. In essence, infinite banking, the focus of infinite banking is actually these three pieces: growth, security, and leverage. So let's break down the growth, the security, and the leverage inside of both an IUL compared to a whole life policy. What does growth look like? What does that math look like? And it's, again, pretty simple. In most cases, if we're looking at the growth potential of a whole life policy compared to just a basic IUL, compared to the SKIA that I referenced, a leveraged IUL, what is the difference? Well, as it relates to growth, the beauty of having a whole life policy is this guarantee. Meaning if you're looking for guarantees, a whole life policy has one, guaranteed growth. And that growth is actually somewhere around, I'd say closer to, I think as of today, 4 to 5%. Is what I would say that growth is. But bottom line is somewhere around 4 to 5% is that guaranteed growth inside of a whole life policy, which is pretty good. Now, the growth inside of an IUL is not guaranteed, but this is where who you get it from matters, who builds it, and the type of life insurance IUL that you're actually using, because there are some great IULs out there that are doing some pretty spectacular performance. On average, that IUL growth is somewhere around 7%. It is not guaranteed. So again, whole life growth guaranteed. IUL, it's not guaranteed. And as it relates to a SKIA, a leveraged IUL, meaning you're using someone else's money, that 7% has the opportunity to generate and create an additional 3%. So again, just from a math perspective, if the objective is to build and generate compound interest, you want your money to make money and that money to make its own money. If we're just looking at the math, One gives me a guaranteed 4%. The other gives me an average of 7%. It's not guaranteed though. So I get it. If I had to choose guaranteed growth versus not guaranteed, I can see the tendency to lean towards the guaranteed. I get it. But when you look at the SKIA, how about 7% plus an additional 3? So 4% guaranteed versus an opportunity to make 10, which is better. And now the participating loan. This is the part where when people scream, become your own bank. Okay, let's talk it through. I'm going to place $1 into a life insurance-based product. My goal is to become my own bank. I'm getting a guaranteed growth inside of my whole life policy of 4 to 5%. Awesome. But now I need to function like a bank. What do banks do? They lend money. So now I need to access the dollars that I've accumulated inside my policy and lend it out. Whether it's for me or someone else, it is going out externally from the policy. What is the cost of using those dollars in my policy? That's the participating loan. Now, there are a few different ways to leverage money in a policy, but I'm focusing on the participating loan. That's the most efficient. In most cases, not all, in most cases, the growth inside of a whole life policy compared to the cost to use the dollar in the whole life policy, there's a negative spread, meaning it costs more to use my money than what I'm making. So if I've got a whole life policy making 4 to 5%, but it costs me negative 6% just to use my money to go do infinite banking. I'm not talking about what I'm invested in. I'm just saying to use my money. There's a negative spread created. Now, if my job is to sell you a product structured like this, then my position is pay less attention to what's happening inside the policy. It's what are you going to use these dollars for? Because if you use these dollars it costs you 6% to use them, and you use them externally and you make 15, there's still a positive spread there. So you're making a positive spread externally. I get it. Name the bank. Name one bank that would accept a negative spread to lend money. Name one. It doesn't exist. So how can you be a bank if you're taking a loss when you're lending money? Again, the math does not math. So is there a way, is there a strategy where we can create more of a positive spread between what grows in the policy and the cost to use it? That's where, if you structure an IUL correctly, it is possible to create a positive spread when you use your money. Again, that average growth inside of a regular IUL, again, regular IUL, no leverage. 7%, it costs somewhere around 4 to 5. And usually that 4 to 5% that it costs inside of an IUL, there's a ceiling. So you want to make sure you're getting the right product, because in some, that ceiling, well, in some, there could be no ceiling, meaning that participating loan can continue to increase. The life insurance policies we generate for this strategy has a ceiling of 6%, which means the maximum amount of the participating loan, the maximum interest rate or the cost that it would be for you to use your money inside your policy would be a maximum of 6%. As of today, it's somewhere between 4 and 5, which means inside your policy, there's a 2 to 3% spread. If we're talking about a leveraged IUL, that 2 to 3% spread is magnified. You've got your money making a 2 to 3% spread, and you've also got the dollar amount that you're leveraging, the borrowed dollar amount being used as a spread there as well. So it ends up doubling, which means you've got a 5 to 6% spread inside your policy when everything is functioning effectively. And again, just from a math perspective, which is better? So the question or the statement of you can't do infinite banking with an index universal life insurance policy might be true if the index universal life insurance policy is not structured correctly. But what if you structure it correctly? So it's not you can't do something. How about we ask a better question? How? What would need to happen? What are the variables that need to be in place so that I can do this strategy? Security. We talk a lot about security. The whole purpose to me for doing or using or having a life insurance-based product to generate and build wealth is because it's a vehicle that provides security. And so when we talk about security, the beauty around a whole life policy is it gives you a fixed interest rate, fixed growth. That dividend is guaranteed and it's fixed, which means as your policy grows, there is a consistent dollar amount that you're going to be able to make over time. That's awesome. If your money was just simply sitting in the stock market, you deal with plus and minus. You deal with, hey, sometimes the market is doing great, sometimes it's not. And what you hope for is that average of that plus and minus growth is moving in an upward direction. That's what you hope for. The reason we use an indexed universal life insurance policy is because we get to eliminate losses. So there's an opportunity to take advantage of the power and growth of the market without dealing with or having to participate in any of the losses. So what that means is, yes, when the market is doing great, we do great. And when the market crashes, we hold. And when the market takes off again, we do great. And when the market crashes, we hold. And when the market takes off, we do great. So with an index strategy, you have the ability to participate in the positive performance of the market and not participate in the negative. Again, which is better? Which one allows you to make more? Not the life insurance company, not the life insurance agent. Which one is better for you as it relates to generating and building wealth? Which one puts you in a better position? So again, it's not you can't do something. Let's reframe the question. What are the factors that need to be in place in order to make this happen? I get it. If you would ask me personally, I'm going to say, people ask me all the time, what's my take on whole life and IULs? To me, they're both mediocre. Like neither one of them are great. But if you structure an index universal life insurance policy properly, it can do some amazing things. But alone, it's still mediocre. It's not the IUL that makes it great. It's the fact that you can now add someone else's money inside the policy that allows more compounding faster. So it's the use of OPM. And that's me being an investor. It's the use of OPM is what makes this strategy better. And so let's just kind of dig into some of the differences. And again, this is that side-by-side piece, meaning if we were to just kind of talk through what are those pieces of the puzzle required to be able to be successful? And you can see the green compared to not green, but let's dig into what specifically. So IUL versus a whole life policy. Both allow for permanent life insurance. Both are permanent life insurance policies, meaning once you have it, you can't lose it. So both allow for that. So when someone is telling you the reason I don't like IULs is because you lose. One of the questions that I get often is how can I make sure I don't lose the life insurance I have? Both are permanent life insurance policies. How do you maintain a permanent life insurance policy? You keep it in force. How do you keep a life insurance policy in force? By keeping up with your contributions. So whether it's a whole life policy or an index universal life or variable life, it doesn't matter. They all function, permanent life insurance policies function the same. As long as you're maintaining the in-force ability of it, you have life insurance. Single policy management. This is huge. Most of you who understand or know someone who does infinite banking, how many policies do they have? Have you ever asked the question why? I was watching a video, and I guess I won't name drop today. I was watching a video and they were talking about, they were bragging about the number of whole life policies they have that they use to do infinite banking. And I want to say the number was 38. 38 policies to do infinite banking. Who truly benefits? Let's just look at the math. Who truly benefits when you have to open a policy every few years? Is it you? Because I get it. It's sold as, hey, this policy that you have, the reason you can't continue using this policy is because if you put any more money into this policy, you will hit your MEC limit. We do not want to hit our MEC limit. So to prevent that, we need to open a brand new policy. Who benefits when you open that brand new policy? Well, that agent that takes that commission benefits first. And so if you have 38 policies versus that growth that you're trying to achieve, is it possible to achieve that growth in the same policy? Is it possible? Again, it's not saying you can't do something. It's asking better questions. Is it possible to have single management? Why do I need to structure my whole life policy and why am I forced to have 38 different policies? Is it possible to have a policy where I can have the growth that I want in one policy? Well, the short answer to that question is yeah. Inside of a leveraged IUL, you absolutely can have single policy management, but a whole life policy, you cannot.
Is there any reason why, like that you've heard of, that sounds like it's a strategy to have multiple policies? I just want to push back on how other people sign on to this idea.
So it starts with structure, meaning if I'm doing infinite banking, I need a policy that's structured correctly so that I can have all of the advantages necessary to be able to leverage my money. One key factor in that structure is it needs to be max funded, meaning I do need to be purchasing the least amount of life insurance legally possible. Max funded also means I need to fund up to my MEC without going over. So I want to fund up to the limit, and funding up to your MEC just means I cannot get any more money into this policy without the policy then lapsing. So we don't want that. So what ends up happening is if I'm doing infinite banking correctly, I'm putting so much money into this policy that I'm hitting that ceiling. So I am forced to get another policy. So the question might be, well, if I'm forced to do that in a whole life policy, why am I not forced to do that in an index universal life insurance policy? Well, it's because I can move the MEC. Using round numbers, if I'm putting $6,000 a year into a policy, my MEC limit is probably 6,003 pennies. So if I want to now put in 7,000 into this policy, or 8,000 or 12,000 or 15,000, my objective would be to move that MEC limit, get you qualified for more life insurance. And there may be someone, maybe not in these comments, but in later comments that will go, wait a minute. Don't you have to qualify for that additional life insurance? Don't you have to, isn't it possible that you may not qualify for that additional life insurance? But hold on, if I'm getting a second policy, am I not doing the same?
Yeah. That was really my question, is where does this fall in the strategy, and why are so many people adopting this it's very common to hear infinite banker or whole life people who are very married to this tool and also multiple policies. So I agree with you. You can't get multiple policies, which means you can't add more money, right, into this machine. But if you don't have a plan for infinite banking, if you do not know what you're going to take the money out for, what we hear time and time again is a lot of people just like to have it. It's like having a 4-wheel drive vehicle, right? All terrain. You've got the big muffler, sounds super loud for no reason at all.
Alert.
Hate those. You've got the biggest tires, lift kit, steps. You got to have the steps to get in there because you were doing things with that truck, like going to Costco. And that's the only place that you go. And you only have it because you like it. Well, that's your business. Do you, boo? But if you were actually wanting to use it for a utility and you never took it anywhere other than to Costco, that was it. Maybe the 4th of July parade. And that's where you felt like it did something there. No shade at anybody, by the way. For real, do you? When it comes to the vehicles, take that loud muffler off. But other than that, do you? Okay? I just wanted to have it because I thought that I was going to use it. But the truth is, you didn't, you don't, And now you're just stuck with this thing that's guzzling gas when you do use it, right? And that's really, that's, I think that sounds equivalent to getting multiple policies. Now we got to get multiple vehicles, and we've got to qualify for the loans on those as well. It's no different than the loan you're qualifying for with your health, right?
Well, I'm a politely push back.
Okay.
And here's why I say this. This is a channel that focuses on understanding where your leverage is located. And I am a fan of, even if I don't need it, that doesn't mean I don't want it. Why? I want to put myself in a position so that I can be flexible and pivot when I need to pivot. And so me having access to the leverage, even though as of right now in this moment, I have no use for it, but I have a secure compound interest producing vehicle that is generating compound interest over time. So me not using it means I'm actually making money during this period. So I see the value in when, again, it's a savings strategy. I see the value in saving as much as I can into the strategy. I do agree with that. So if the problem is with a infinite banking using a whole life policy, I am limited to the size of the life insurance policy I can have. So I am forced to get multiple policies if I want additional leverage.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of the additional leverage part. It's just this strategy isn't conducive to me being able to do it without having to have multiple policies. And I go back to asking better questions. Is there a strategy that will allow me to do this where I don't need to have multiple policies?
Yeah. And so essentially what you're saying is, like, if you're 25 and you jump in, which we recommend anybody start their wealth building strategy as soon as possible, right?
Absolutely.
But let's say you're 25 and you qualify for a plan, and then age 30, you get a promotion. You want to be able to put more money in so you can get more money compounding faster. What happens in these two differences here?
So in actuality, the ability to qualify for both of them is actually the same. It's based off your max insurability. Your max insurability is based off your age and your income. So you said 25 years old, right?
Yeah, you start, yes.
So if you're 25 years old and let's say you make 40 grand a year, 25-year-old making 40 grand a year, what is their max? What is the maximum amount of life insurance they can have? Well, it's a simple mathematical equation.
They're broke.
25-year-old making 40,000 a year.
Is not really hanging that tough in this economy. But moving forward,
25-year-old making $40,000 a year, their max insurability is 40 times their income. 40 times 40,000 a year is $1.6 million is what they qualify for in life insurance. So to your point, 25-year-old can't put away enough to be able to have 1.6 million.
right?
Maybe they can put away 10 times their age a month. 25 putting away 250, that's $3,000 a year. So that $3,000 a year that they're able to put away may be buying somewhere around, instead of 1.6, it might be buying somewhere around 150,000 in life insurance. So this is them getting started in their infinite banking journey. That's awesome. Well, now they hit 30. Now they're making more. Now they have the liquidity to be able to put more away. They're no longer making 40,000 a year. They're now making $100,000 a year. So now they want to increase the amount of money they have compounding. But this policy they originally bought was designed correctly, so it's max funded, which means they can't put more than $250 a month, which is $3,000 a year in it. So what do?
Well, hopefully they went to the inflation calculator to learn why 100,000 doesn't feel like 100,000 and feels more like 40,000 5 years ago because of the housing market. And just a moment of silence for them in this generation, because we didn't have to deal with that when we were their age. What do? So what do they do after they realize all of that?
And for those who may be new, I don't know if you realize this about my wife, but she's what's called a rabbit hole hunter. And so there are these paths that we end up finding and falling in. So don't be shocked if we end up down a path that we didn't originally start on.
Yeah. And also, either I'm sorry or you're welcome, or both.
So, but
It's, well, hold on. It's a real conversation.
it is.
It is
and it's worth having.
It's the part of the whole equation, because we can't look forward and think about what if in the future under these conditions. We know that things are not going to get cheaper. We know that inflation that there are certain industries and markets that are not following inflation. If we think that Gen Z has it bad right now, because we were not walking out of our parents' homes into we could rent someplace pretty inexpensively just about anywhere. We were not faced with the same market. Depending on the state that you're in, obviously makes that worse. But even wages and what they have access to straight out of high school, regardless of if they are getting degrees or not, it's a completely different landscape. And so building wealth sounds like, well, just all of the excess, let's make it that grow. And it's for only for people who are making over six figures. And it must be something that when you get out of survival mode, then maybe you can think about it. But the truth is, you will not be able, we're not building wealth, we're building stability, security. So maybe we need to change the word, because this is really about building, future proofing your finances. It's not, for some people, what they're actually building is not any kind of amount of wealth. They're building leverage enough to be able to survive and have access to resource or options, right? And opportunities. And so it's enough to survive.
And that's where pay yourself first.
Yeah.
The first step, like again, if we're going to use the 25-year-old scenario, the best thing that 25-year-old can do is to start. And it's not start with $1 million, because you as a 25-year-old, you're broke. You don't have $1 million. Okay, I get it. What can you do? And it's just getting started. And then as that compound interest starts to build, as that leverage starts to be created, now you're placed in a position where you can do more. All we're talking about here as it relates to single policy management is, if I'm in a position to do more, wouldn't it be awesome to have a policy that can grow with me versus I now have to jump out of this policy to start something new?
Right. And that's, I think, for the majority of people who are sending us questions, even that decision right there is really hard to make when you have one person who is saying, no, you want multiple policies, and another person going, why would you? Right. And they're making it seem like they're
You only have one policy?
pogs. When that they're pogs. Policies are the new Pokemon cards, and look at how many I have.
Right.
Is that a good thing? Or is it where I'm not going to say what I was just going to say.
Good job.
Okay. But I'm still going to go into the direction. Okay. Stay with me, folks. Is it no different than saying, we have this thing, it was built a long time ago, and instead of having the one that we carry through that we can use all the time, we have to get multiple of them. And if you remember what I was talking about at the beginning of the stream, I was talking about marriages. Now, our sound effect button doesn't work, but I'm telling you right now, I was going to play the sound. I don't know why it's not working. It sounds, we can hear it on our side, but you guys can't hear it, which is terrible. That's the part, making the decision to say, which one do I do? By the time I've purchased this, now I need to understand how to use it. Nobody's talking about that part because they can't, right? They can't advise. And the majority of people in life insurance don't last more than the first year. 3 years is like really the max for the majority of people. And so what are they doing past that point? Are they into infinite banking so deep that they are now making money hand over fist with all of their infinite banking endeavors? Or is it just a catchy catchphrase to use, and they've not ever even borrowed from their policy to invest? Different if you're borrowing from your policy to buy a car or for personal reasons, and then you put it back or whatever, that's their business. But if you're doing infinite banking, it really means that you're using it as leverage to invest, right? So getting the right tool, this is that moment where people are going, well, which one do I do? Okay, back to you, Donnell.
Thank you, dear. So single policy management. Obviously, in an IUL you can, in a whole life policy you cannot. Now, this next one, 50% or more liquid in the first year. And I know it shows both. And I can build a leveraged IUL that will give you at least 50% liquidity. But that's about the max that I've seen. So I'm actually going to reverse this. let's make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to say that is actually, if you're looking for max liquidity in the first year, I would say that a whole life policy does this better. But let's also understand the product we are purchasing. Why did you get this infinite banking strategy? Did you get it for only the first year? I don't think you did. I think you got this savings vehicle, this savings strategy, so that you can have leverage over time to be able to invest in what you want, build wealth, at some point take income. I'm sure there are many other factors other than how much can I access in year one. So I would say this is a spot where a whole life policy does better. But you have to peel the layers back. What is the impact of you having 50% more or more, 90% liquidity in year one inside of your whole life policy? Peel the layers back and ask the questions, what's the impact on the full growth of my policy over time as a result? Because when you peel those layers back, what you learn is you've got a policy that will never break even. You've got a policy that if it does break even, it won't break even until year 12 or 15. And we'll get into what that break even point means. But my point is, if we're just talking about first year liquidity, one does better than another, and the whole life policy can absolutely do better than a leveraged IUL. Expenses. This is one, I review a lot of policies. And because there's a lot of people out here who have these Lafayette Life, Mass Mutual, whole life policies that they are very proud of. And when they ask me questions about fees, because the story is whole life policies have little to no fees. That's the story. And IULs are riddled in fees. The likelihood of your IUL imploding is very high. And I'm actually going to say that can be true. Can be true. But that's where it goes back to, what company did you get it from? What agent built it? What is the structure of this policy? So when we're talking about a properly structured index universal life insurance policy that's designed with leverage, it's not even close. And I would challenge you, if you have a whole life policy, turn to the fees page. Grab your whole life policy, take a look at what it is you're contributing, and then go to the page where it shows you the breakdown of your fees. It doesn't exist. And we're not asking the right questions. The question we should be asking is, why? Why, when I go to my whole life policy and I go to whatever the page is that shows the illustrated breakdown of what I'm contributing, that's there. Why isn't there a breakdown of what is it costing me to have this policy? Because when you look at the breakdown of the fees inside, you should be able to know where every dollar is gone. But the bottom line is, when we talk about expenses, it is not even close. The fee structure inside of a properly structured IUL is designed for you. And because it's designed for you, it has to be designed with a decreasing fee structure. Hard fact. Whereas with most, and I'm going to say, when I say most, if we're talking about 10 policies, I'm going to say 9 out of those 10, poorly designed. Guaranteed security features. This is a permanent life insurance policy through a mutual life insurance company. So the guaranteed security features are the same for both. Whether we're talking about a whole life policy or an IUL, doesn't matter. The ability to add leverage to the policy. The ability to take someone else's money, add it back into the policy as brand new premium. Is that acceptable in a whole life policy compared to a properly designed leveraged IUL? Again, it's just factual. You can apply this. You can apply leverage to you can apply leverage back as brand new premium inside of a properly structured IUL, but you cannot do that in the whole life policy. And again, if this is going to be an apples to apples discussion, it's asking the right question. Why? Why can't I? And if I cannot apply leverage into a whole life policy, why? And what does the structure need to look like so that I can? Because can we agree, especially my real estate investors out there, can we agree the usage of other people's money allows you to make more? So if we know this, and if this strategy is designed so that I can do external investments, why wouldn't I be able to apply OPM inside of my policy? Why? And I think if enough of us are asking this question, we can actually address this issue with this strategy. 10% plus growth potential. And I'm talking 10% plus growth potential inside the policy. We've already gone through that. I showed you the visual. You can get that guaranteed 4 to 5% inside of your whole life policy. And I can prove to you, I can show you where you can achieve on average 7% on the IUL and then another 2 to 3% on the leverage dollar amount you're using. We can get to that, I'll call it 8 to 12% growth potential inside of a leveraged IUL. 10% distribution potential. Why did you get this policy? Most people who do infinite banking are not planning to infinitely bank for the rest of their life. One of the other factors around infinite banking is the ability to at some point receive income. So while I'm using the money in the policy to do external investments, I'm using them to buy more assets. Those assets are going to at some point produce me a return that I can also use as income when it's time. So the goal of the infinite banking strategy is to also produce income. Where in your infinite banking strategy using your whole life policy are you able to take distributions? What, and again, this is where asking better questions. What is required of the structure that you have? What's required of that structure so that you can produce income? Like, what needs to happen? Well, can we agree that if you're making 4 to 5% inside your policy and it costs you 6 to 8% to use the money, it's very difficult to live off something that's creating negative spread inside the policy. So at a minimum, we need to be generating a positive spread in the policy so that when I go to leverage the dollar amount for supplemental income, I am not causing my policy to implode. And that's where a leveraged IUL shines. If I'm making 10 to 13% in the policy, and it's costing me 4 to 5% to use the money in the policy, there's a positive spread every time I'm using a dollar inside my policy, so the ability for my policy to implode is less. Tax-free distributions. This is a properly structured cash value life insurance policy. They all allow for tax-free distributions. The growth is actually growing tax deferred. And as long as you are borrowing the dollar amount out to use, it is a tax-free distribution. And they both allow for that. And then tax-free death benefit. Again, these are both properly structured cash value life insurance policies. So they both allow for tax-free death benefit. So if we're just comparing colors, which is better? And again, if I'm over here, it's not I can't do something. It's why can't I do something? Why do I need multiple policies? Why are the expenses the way that they are? Why can I not add leverage to my policy? Let's ask better questions so that we can get to better solutions. And then the last one is, can I do infinite banking, whether it's a leveraged IUL or a whole life policy? And the answer is, we can do it in both. But notice, structure matters. But the question isn't, should you or could you? It's, can you? Can you do infinite banking in both? And the answer is yes. You just have to make sure it's structured correctly. But now, what I want to do is kind of dig into some of the specifics. So let's look at a properly structured whole life policy designed for infinite banking. And let's understand some of the differences between the exact same, I'll call it process in a leveraged IUL. And when I'm looking at whole life policies, the first place that I focus is, one, what is that break-even point? Meaning if I'm putting in a certain dollar amount, and this one is for a 38-year-old standard non-tobacco, 38-year-olds putting in $49.06 a month, $49.06 a year, and that's the dollar amount being contributed. And the question is, at what point, what is that cash value? What is that total cash value at the end of year one? So my first question traditionally is, where do I break even? Meaning if I'm putting in $49.06, at what point does that $49.06 equal what it is I'm contributing? At what point? And the reason I want to know that first is because that tells me if I can the earlier I can break even, the earlier I can start building compound interest. Meaning, it is difficult for my money to make money if the vehicle that I'm putting my money in is losing money. Does that make sense? The goal is for, if I put in $1, I want access to that dollar. But if I put in $1 and I only have access to 50 cents, then at what point can I ever expect to be able to take income? It would have made more sense for me to just keep the money that I was, keep the money out of that product and eventually turn that into income.
Right. And that's the number one thing that people ask is, when can I leverage my money for infinite banking?
Well, not just infinite banking, but income in general. Meaning, if I put in $1 and I have 50 cents available, I can leverage that 50 cents to do infinite banking. That's not a problem. So the ability to leverage your cash value, yes, it's there. But for me, it's what about the income? The reason I want to know where I break even, because if I don't break even for 5 years, then that means it's going to take me another 5 years for my money to double. So where I break even matters. So at what point in this policy, if I'm putting in 4906 throughout this period of time, at what point do I break even? And I think I already put it here. Yeah. What this is saying is, it's going to take, and here I'll highlight it. It's going to take, I want to say it's right here. It takes 8 years inside this policy. So that's 4906. I guess I can zoom in. It takes 8 years inside this policy before I even break even. So that first 8 years equates to about $39,187. So if I come over here and look at that same period of time, it's right here. So at this point, at the 8-year mark is where you break even. Oh, there you go. At this point, at the 8-year mark is where you break even inside this policy. So what that means is, in order to start making money over and above what I've contributed, it's going to start somewhere around that 8-year mark. And again, this is a bare bones whole life policy, nothing special. I'm simply putting in 4906 a month. I keep saying 4906 a month. 4906 a year. Well, what would that look like inside of a properly designed index universal life insurance policy? And this is a properly designed index universal life insurance policy without leverage. Where do we break even? And I've kind of already highlighted it here. It's at year 5. So again, this gentleman, yeah, it's standard plus non-tobacco. The break-even point in this policy is year 5. So 4906 times 5 equates to 24,530. At year 5, we would have an accumulation value about 24,889. So I'm about $300 more in cash value than what I've contributed. So that break-even point, again, the importance of that break-even point tells me this is where I can start generating income. But let's go a step further. Just because I break even, how much accessibility, how much of my money is actually working for me when I open this policy? So coming back over to this whole life policy, I put in 4906 in year 1, 4906 in year 1. How much do I actually have available in cash value? How much is actually working for me in this policy? 3771. So I put in 4906, I've got 3771 working for me. So let's do some math. Good times. 4906 minus 3771 gives me, what is that? 1. So that means I lost $1,135 just in year 1. I put in 4906, I've got 3771 working for me. I lost $1,135 in year 1. Again, this is where I should be able to turn to the page in my whole life policy that explains the difference between what I put in and what I have available. Go find it. But what does that look like inside of, again, a properly structured IUL? And just so that I can zoom in a little bit better. Oh, Hold on. Let me do this real quick.
Okay. Just take your time.
Yeah, we'll get there.
By the way, we have some really great questions that have loaded up in the chat. So that's, if you have any, this would be a good time to jump in there. Some people say, I don't know where the chat is. If you hit the comments on your mobile device or on the computer as well, I think that's where they are. Then you'll see the comments, the live chat should pull up. But if you're watching the replay, this doesn't apply to you. Okay.
So what I was getting at was, okay, so inside of a properly structured IUL, putting in the same 4906, come on, same 4906, and my accumulation value, meaning how much money is actually working for me, is 4396. So again, if I'm putting in 4906 and I have 4396 working for me, that's a difference of $510. So again, my point was this. I put in 4906 in both of these policies. There's going to be fees associated with it. There's no way around that. I should at least be able to turn to the fees page and understand what is that breakdown? What are those fees I'm being charged? Because I'm okay with that as long as I can outperform, outproduce, outpace those fees. And again, the break-even point. One breaks even in 8 years, one breaks even in 5 years. I'm going to say they're similar. One is absolutely better than the other, but I'm still going to call it similar. Is there a way we can beat that? Is there a way that we can improve that? Again, asking better questions. Is there a way I can break even faster inside of my whole life policy? Is there a way I can break even faster inside of my leveraged IUL? Well, the answer to that question is yes. But before we get there, let's break down these fees. So one is 1135. The other is 510. Again, what is this breakdown of these fees inside of this whole life policy? Well, I'm sorry, I can't find it because there's not a page that breaks down what those fees are. But inside of a properly designed IUL, there absolutely is a fees page, and this is it. There are 3 buckets of fees associated with all, not some, all life insurance policies. And those 3 buckets of fees is there's a premium charge, there's an expense charge, there's a cost of insurance. And if you add these 3 numbers up, again, without me doing it, if you add these 3 numbers up, it's more than the 510 that we're showing. But it's because that 4906 is going to make a certain dollar amount. And then the fees, the premium charge, the expense charge, the cost of insurance are going to come out of that. So the difference between what I put in, the 4906, and the 4396 that I have in accumulation value, the difference between those 2 numbers, I have the reason. I know why. And as I mentioned, the fee structure should be in a decreasing fashion. Notice the expense charge is where that opportunity is located. It starts out at $274 a year, then it drops down to $103 a year, down to $60 a year forever. It's this decreasing structure that allows your policy to build compound interest faster. Why? When do I need the money the most? I need the money in the latter years, so I need my policy to be generating the least amount of fees at that point. There are certain things that we cannot do anything about. We can't do much about the premium charge. As I can add a premium into this policy, there's a premium charge. Not much you can do about that. The expense charge is where the cost of underwriting, the cost of me, that's where the life insurance person's commission is located in this expense charge. The key is it needs to be designed such that it's a decreasing structure. The cost of insurance, this is another one we can't do much about. As we get older, it costs more to insure us. But because of that decreasing fee structure as it relates to the expense charge, I can at least outperform the fees with the growth in the policy. Meaning that 7 to 10% that I'm making inside the policy outperforms whatever this fee structure is. So it ends up not even mattering. But the key piece is it's designed correctly. But let's continue this a little bit further. As we break down how a policy like this performs in comparing a whole life policy to an index universal life insurance policy, and again, a leveraged IUL. If we were to just look at the first 7 years, Whether we're talking about a whole life policy or an IUL, not even paying any attention to growth. I'm not concerned about any growth. Uh-oh.
We have some questions too, and I think it's in this topic if
Okay.
you wanted to not make them wait too long.
Let's do it.
Okay. The first one is from Jasper. Jasper says, since acquiring your IUL, have they dropped the cap ceiling? I hear the newer policies get a higher cap, but eventually it's lowered. So there's some rumors out there, and maybe are you going to talk about the ceiling at all
So
on the floor?
So we can, and I would suggest you go ahead and take me off of take me off the Vibe board because I think we lost it. So go ahead and ask me that question again.
Since acquiring the IUL, have they dropped your IUL? Have they dropped the cap or the ceiling? I hear the newer policies get a higher cap, but eventually it's lowered.
The beauty about the life insurance company we work with, because that varies from life insurance company to life insurance company, and here's what I mean. That can be a factor in some of the policies that you get depending on the life insurance company you're with. But the policies that I write this strategy through is only one life insurance company, and it happens to be Mutual of Omaha. And Mutual of Omaha actually grandfathers. What that means is, even though whether the cap changes or not is not going to impact the current clients that exist. And to your question though, when have I seen, or when has, or when did, or since I've had my policy, has that cap changed? It is not. I've had my policy since 2020. And since 2020, it has been absolutely been the same. And that is, hold on one moment. And that is the 0% floor with a 10% cap. Now, the cost of the interest rate has changed. It's changed 1% since I've had my policy. So over the 5 years that I've had my policy, I want to say it started out as somewhere around 4% when I started my policy, and as of today, it's 5%. So that is a change that has happened inside my policy. But as far as the cap and the floor, it has not.
Okay. And I'm gonna save Sequia's question and move to Pfizer because it's about the break even point.
Okay.
It says 5 years break even in an IUL is best case scenario though, since it's not guaranteed, right?
And that's the beauty. I think, well, short answer to your question is I agree with you. And I'd say if we're talking about break even points in life insurance policies in general, I'd say the best is somewhere around that 4 to 5 year mark. But here's the thing. When you add the leverage to a leveraged IUL, that leverage process starts in year 3 and in some cases year 2. And so what ends up happening is that break-even point shifts. In this policy specifically, the break-even point in it is actually year 3, and it's because you put in 4906 in year 1, functions like any IUL. You put in 4906 in year 2, functions like any IUL. At year 3, when you go to put in that third 4906, the life insurance company adds 4906. So as a result, you've got 3 years of your contribution plus 1 year of the life insurance company's contribution all working for you in this policy. So your break-even point shifts from what is showed as year 5 in a bare bones policy ends up being year 3. Show me a policy that breaks even at year 3. I'll wait. And that's what makes this process different. So I go back to, it's asking better questions. It's not, you can't do this. It's, how do we structure this thing so we can? Great question.
Are you ready to move forward yet, or do you want another question?
No, as long as you can see the vibe board, we can.
Yep, we're good.
So all I was just what I wanted to share here is if we just look at the last, I'll call it, or the first 7 years inside of this strategy. First 7 years inside of this strategy. Oh, let me get rid of that. Let me go back to that. Again, putting in 4906, whether we're talking about a whole life or an IUL, can we agree? It's the same dollar amount. It's nothing different. Whether we're talking an IUL or a whole life policy, it's the same amount. I'm not even talking about the growth, not talking about the guaranteed 4%, not talking about the average 7% growth that you may get. I'm not adding growth in this equation at all. I'm just strictly talking about the money that is working for you. It's the same dollar amount, whether we're talking about an IUL or a whole life policy. But when you add the leverage, and this is kind of what I was referencing earlier, when you add the leverage, and I'll zoom in for you, In year one, you've put in 4906. In year two, you've put in 4906. But in year three, something special happens. That leverage kicks in at year three. And in year four, it's the same leverage being added. And in year five, that leverage doubles. Year five and year six. Then in year seven and year eight, that leverage triples. Again, just from a math perspective, which is better? If you've got 4906 working for you in both of these policies compared to, I think it's somewhere around $78,000 in total working for you here compared to 34,000. Yeah, I guess you can see it. I can help you see it. There's, oh, still not there. It's in the 7-year mark, 4906 times 7 is about $34,342. But when you add the leverage, this combined dollar amount is in total $78,500. And again, this is no growth. This is just what's working for you. So which is better? 34,000 working for you or 78,000 working for you? And again, I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm sharing with you what we actually do. And if we're just focused on, I want a strategy that can build and generate wealth for me. I want a strategy where my money can work securely for me. And because I am a bank, I want to be able to use other people's money like a bank uses other people's money. So I want a strategy that will allow me to add other people's money in it. And when I add that other people's money, guess what happens? That 34,000 that I'm contributing has an additional 34,000 or so that's working for me. So in total, I have double the amount working for me inside my policy than you would just having a basic whole life or even a basic IUL. Again, which one is better? Which one allows you to hit your goals faster? And I don't know that I mentioned this, but I think a part of that question that we just had up, sweetheart, was around guaranteed. Right. This is a big question that I get often. Whole life policies, I have guaranteed growth of somewhere around 4 to 5%. You're right. The growth on either one, whether it's an index universal life insurance policy or a leveraged IUL, either one, the growth is not guaranteed. You're right. But what does the data say? So, what is so awesome about the timing of this question is the question that I wanted to address here was, this came out of that video that I had referenced earlier. A client of mine was asking, or one of the comments on our video was stating, there is no way you can get a guaranteed 13% out of a strategy like this. And my response to him was this: you're right. Nowhere have I said you can get a guaranteed 13%, but I did say you can get 13%. It's not guaranteed, but what does the data say over time? And let's just use my personal situation. I've had my policy since 2020. So let's look at the performance of an IUL over the last 24 years. And again, I know this is a busy chart. I will zoom in, but I just wanted to give you the breadth of it. What we're looking at is the performance of the S&P 500 inside of an index universal life insurance policy with leverage over time. And this is from 1997 through 2025. And so if we just simply drill in to the starting in 2020. So in 2020, this first column is the S&P 500 return. So this first column, I guess I'll do it this way. The first column is the S&P 500 crediting return. So if you have an IUL and that IUL is tied to the S&P 500, and if you've been on this channel, you know that any strategy, any leveraged IUL that I build, they're all built the same way. The only crediting strategy we use is the S&P 500. Why? Because I have the data over time. I get it. There may be some other indices that may be functioning or performing better to date. Well, in today's market, it's not. But the bottom line is the reason we use the S&P 500 because it's tried and true. I have the data over time that proves how it does or doesn't function. And then the match. So we've got the crediting return that happens inside the IUL. When we use the leverage is making the same crediting dollar amount, but there is a cost to borrowing the money. There's a cost to adding leverage in the policy. to better understand what that strategy looks like, I want to just highlight this again. What's happening inside of a leveraged IUL is your contribution is going into the general fund along with a leveraged dollar amount. Both of those dollar amounts are protected by the 0% floor. And then there's a portion of that dollar amount that's taken and used to buy a call option. So when I talk about the crediting strategy, it's the crediting of that call option between these two dollar amounts, my contributions and the contributions being made by the life insurance company. So this first column is the crediting going into, or as it relates to my contribution. The second is the crediting as it relates to the leveraged dollar amount, but that leveraged dollar amount came at a cost. And that cost prior to 2022 was 4%. But as of today, it's 5%.
You want me to go full vibe board?
I don't know that it matters because this is just it's a weird chart. And I think the font on it is so small, it just kind of is what it is at this point. So, but I'll make it as large as I can. So if we're just looking at 2020, in 2020, what was the crediting of the S&P 500 in my policy? It was 10%. And the leveraged dollar amount, the borrowed dollar amount in my policy, what was that crediting? 10%. But it cost me 4% to borrow this 10. So again, as long as there's a positive spread made, I keep the difference. So 10% minus 4% is 6%. So what did I make in total in 2020? It's just math. How about 16%? 2021, same thing. 10% made, 10% leverage, it cost me 4. What did I make? 16%. This is not guaranteed, but this is actually what I made inside my policy. Anyone know what happened in 2022? The market crashed. When the market crashed, what happened in my policy? Well, this is an index universal life insurance policy. I benefit from the growth of the market, but when the market crashes, I hold. I don't benefit from any negative performance. Negative performance in the market does not negatively impact my performance in my policy. I hold where I am. There's a contractual guarantee that says I cannot lose any money I've put into this policy. There's no guarantee on the growth. There's guarantee on the fact that I can't lose. So these prior 2 years, where I made 16%, just because the market crashed in 2022, this combined 16% in year 20 and 21 that I made, I get to keep. Just because the market crashed, I didn't lose anything that I made in the prior years. But what happened in 2022? I made nothing. So I got a fat 0% in 2022. And the leverage dollar amount I used inside my policy made nothing. But let's be clear, the life insurance company does not care that I did not make any money that year. I borrowed a certain dollar amount from the life insurance company, and that cost on that borrowed dollar amount is 4%. So in essence, I made negative 4% in my policy in total. So 16 in 2020, 16 in 2021. The statement made was there's no way you can make 13%. Yes, there is, but it is not guaranteed. Some years I will, some years I won't. And then go to 2023, what happened? The market recovered. And when the market recovered, I made my 16. And in 2024, I made another 16. We're now sitting in 2025. Anyone know where we're headed in 2025? But that's not even the point. The point is, what is the actual performance? It's not guaranteed. But if the IUL is structured correctly, I have the ability to outperform that 4 to 6% that you are guaranteed inside of your whole life policy. It goes back to structure. If it's structured right, you can achieve your goals. If it's structured right, you can put your money in a position to outperform. And even if 2025 ends up being a zero performing year and I lose 5%, if we were to just simply average.
Well, wouldn't 2023 and 2024 be 15 since the.
Oh, my bad. You are 100. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
They'll come for us if we don't fix it.
Thank you for that. Let me restate what she stated. The cost of borrowing the dollar amount in 2020, 2021, and 2022 for me 2020, 2021, and 2022 for me was 4%. I think someone had asked, had the ceiling changed in my policy? The ceiling and the floor had not changed, but the cost to borrow, because what happened during this period? This is when inflation skyrocketed. This is when interest rates changed. And so the cost to borrow shifted from 4% to 5% in 2023. So it cost me a percentage more than it cost me the prior year. So you're absolutely correct. So if I made 10% on my money and I made 10% on the leveraged money, but the cost of that leveraged money was 5% now, I did not make 16%. Thank you, sweetheart. I made 15%. You're spot on. And so in 2024, I did the same, 15%. But it goes back to the statement that was made. There is no way you can make 13% inside of a strategy like this. Show it to me. I'm showing it to you. It's not guaranteed though. And if you were to just simply average the 16 plus the 15 minus the 4 and minus a potential 5 for 2025, we don't know how 2025 is going to end. But even if it was a negative performance for 2025, what is the average of just that period of time in my policy? That averages out to somewhere around, again, you guys can do the math, but if I remember correctly, it averages around somewhere around 8.3, 8.4%. So I am still outperforming the average over time inside of a strategy like this. And I am just about doubling what you can do inside of a whole life policy. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm sharing with you what is actually happening in my policy. So instead of saying you can't do something, let's ask a better question around what is required of your current policy to be able to achieve performance like this? Or how about this? Can we do better than this? Like, is there a way to structure things so that we could absolutely do better? This is where the argument might come, well, you're using the S&P 500 for this strategy. There are other indices that can be used, like the B of A has an index fund. There's other index funds that can be used. What if we use something other than the S&P 500 for this strategy? I think that's a valuable argument. But here's the difference. I have the data over time that shows how the S&P 500 functions. And the S&P 500, I'd say since over the last 35 years is somewhere around 7.2% average. I'll take that. I'll take slow, steady, secure growth all day long.
Just real quick, the other part about this is you don't get to pick, right? You don't get to pick, and you have to also you can only do this with a carrier that will allow it.
Right.
So I think one thing that I really would prefer that you also add in here is, why can't you just do this with any IUL? Why can't you borrow from the policy and just put it back in and hope for the best with the spread? And then we have two questions.
Well, I think the short answer to that is it's not allowed. It's not if I went to life insurance X to be able to do this strategy, would they allow, again, random name, I don't want to name drop, so just random name, would they allow it? And the truth is, they probably would not. What is it that we're actually doing? It's a play on this strategy called premium financing. So this is not new. The strategy that we're walking through is not special. It is a play on premium financing. Premium financing has been around since 1997. The difference between this strategy and premium financing is premium financing requires a net worth of about $5 million for you to be able to do it. Whereas this strategy allows you to use your own contributions as collateral to be able to borrow money from the life insurance policy. So it requires you to contribute to your policy year 1 and year 2. Starting in year 3, you're able to add that leverage into your policy to help it grow faster. So it's how the strategy is applied, but it's not new. And the reason this can't be applied to other life insurance policies from other life insurance companies is also because it's proprietary. What other question you guys would have?
Okay, so the other questions that Sequia is putting out here, that a question a lot of people do not ask. It's great. Throw some more of those in there, because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, right? And it's helpful to know what we could have asked or should have asked, right? What people do not ask is, what happens if there is an emergency and you need the funds from my policy. What happens then?
And that's where structure is so important here, because when you need those funds also matters. So that's where the dollar amount I put in, when does it break even? The amount I put in, how much is working for me? And based off the dollar amount I put in, what is the difference between the money that's working for me and what I've contributed into it? Because understanding where your money is important. And so not asking, or well, you're right. A question that most people don't ask is, what is that process? Well, it's every cash value life insurance policy functions the same as it relates to this area. And that is, you have access to your cash value at any time that you want it. Now, the strategy that we reference, usually when I'm walking people through this particular strategy of using a leveraged IUL, I highlight year 1 and year 2 are very critical, because year 1 and year 2 dictate how much you can add as leverage at year 3. So if you can avoid it, I would suggest you allow year 1 and year 2 to function as normal. But in an emergency, if you needed your cash value, there is not a person that can tell you you can't access it. Your cash value is your cash value. If you need it, it's as simple as leveraging or borrowing against your cash value to do whatever you want. Now, how you use your cash value matters. Whenever you're using money inside of a cash value life insurance policy, it should be a borrowed dollar amount in the form of a participating loan. Participating loan is saying, when I borrow that money for that emergency and I go do whatever with it, the actual dollar amount never left my policy. My policy is still functioning as normal, even though I have a borrowed dollar amount in my hand and I get to go do something with. And remember infinite banking. If we're going to do infinite banking, whether it's an emergency or not, if we're going to do infinite banking, if I borrow money out of my policy, how does infinite banking work? I borrow that dollar amount, I have to replace the dollar amount that I put in it. So as long as we're doing infinite banking as prescribed, how you get your money out is the same for all cash value life insurance policies. You borrow against it. And you can borrow, I want to say, up to somewhere between 80 and 90% of the cash value that you have. So that process is the same regardless.
So Carol Edward had a really good question, and here we go. And so I was pulling that up because you were pretty much answering it.
Mm-hmm.
What if you want to take a loan out the first year in a leveraged IUL to pay off high interest debt? Is there an opportunity to make payments back to the policy to make it whole? And I do think you answered that. The only part of that was the high interest debt part, and understanding the rate that you can pay that off. I mean, that's essentially velocity banking, which is at the core of infinite banking, which is a form of being able to use leverage.
That's it.
Yeah.
And again, your cash value is no one can tell you you cannot touch your cash value. Again, if this is me building a policy for you, I am going to suggest you allow those. You get through the first. I want the maximum amount of leverage going into your policy. The maximum amount of leverage going into your policy is determined by what you do in the first 2 years. So if you need to leverage your cash value within the first 2 years, fine. Do infinite banking. I'm going to use it and I'm going to replace it after I've used it. No harm, no foul. And if you can do it within the time frame of that 2-year span, then your policy's whole anyway. And so at year 3, you're going to get the maximum amount of leverage. So again, you have access to your cash value. No one can tell you not to use it. And again, why did you get this policy? You got this policy so that if you needed leverage at some point, you can pivot and use it. That's the whole point in getting it. So use your leverage.
Okay, are we ready to go back?
Yeah, we can. So we're just about done. Last thing I just wanted to highlight is some of the misconceptions that we kind of talked through. So IULs can't be used for infinite banking. Hopefully what we've learned today is that is 100% false. It's not that IULs can't be used for infinite banking, it's that structure matters. How the policy is structured makes all the difference in the world. And there's no guarantees in IULs. That's not true. There's no guarantee on the growth of an IUL. The reason we use an IUL for this strategy is because of the most important guarantee, and that is there's a contractual guarantee that the money you put into this policy cannot be lost due to market risk. There's a contractual guarantee that says any growth on the money that you put into this policy cannot be lost due to market risk. That guarantee is the number one reason why an IUL is used for this strategy. And to me, if you were to ask me, which would I prefer? Guaranteed 4 to 5% growth or guaranteed no loss due to market risk? Well, I would rather have the opportunity to make more in my policy by taking advantage of the growth in the market and having security to know in downturn periods, in bear market times like we're in today, I am not concerned about the money that I've made over these last 4 years being lost. Apply that guarantee to your 401k. Imagine your company's 401k giving you a contractual guarantee that all of the money you made from 2024 and prior could not be lost due to whatever nonsense is happening in 2025. Imagine how much better you would sleep at night. That's the reason why this vehicle is used. So I will take the guaranteed no loss over the guaranteed 4 to 5% growth any day, all day, and twice on Sundays. It's too complicated. Is it? I think it's kind of peeling back the layers and understanding how things work. Because actually, IULs offer a lot more, I call it detail as to why things are the way that they are. And my example of that is the fees. If you don't understand what you're paying in your policy, you should be able to turn to a page and see exactly what you're paying. Why can I see that in an IUL and I can't see it in a whole life policy? What is being hidden from me and why? And then, speaking of fees, higher fees. It's all about structure. Yes, I have seen poorly designed IULs. I have seen IULs that implode. Is it possible to build an IUL that implodes over a certain period of time? Absolutely, there is. There's also a way to do that with a whole life policy too. Meaning, the structure of the policy that you have, whether it's a whole life or an IUL, matters. Designing it with a decreasing fee structure is very important. The decreasing fee structure allows your money to compound faster and outperform the fees in it, which gives you more compound interest, more cash value that you are able to leverage and use. So that structure matters. And lastly, we've learned a few things. Nelson Nash didn't have access to these modern solutions. So the book he wrote was based off the information he had at the time. But what I appreciate about it is he told us, hey, as technology changes, be aware, because there may be an opportunity for us to do better in this strategy as the technology changes. Why are we not adhering, since for most of us who do infinite banking and build infinite banking strategies, I think we can agree that most use Becoming Your Own Banker, written by Nelson Nash, as their Bible as it relates to how you structure a policy. So let's not just take one, I'll call it one verse out of the Bible and build a church. If we're going to use the book to design a policy that makes sense, how about we pay attention to everything that's in it and adhere to the technology as it changes, we apply it.
Preach.
And again, it goes back to just simply asking the question. I'm not telling you what to do. Maybe we can ask better questions around what does the structure need to be inside of a whole life policy so that we can do better, because the technology has changed. Not all policies are the same. Structure matters. And you kind of hinted upon this earlier, sweetheart. Why are 90% of agents leaving this industry? What is it about these products that they are selling that are forcing them out of this industry as a whole? Why? Because if the goal is to help people, if the goal is to build policies and processes so that people can achieve their goals, what is this about? And again, we have to ask better questions. Most people don't know how to read a policy. And so I get excited when people share their policies with me, because 9 times out of 10, it will take me somewhere around 30 seconds to determine whether or not your policy is designed correctly. And if you want, I can sit down and show you exactly what to look for, because there's some predatory people out here. And the idea is to move beyond that, get a policy that's structured properly so that you can invest in what you want. Leverage is the key. And I just kind of jump down here to the bottom. Most people don't realize this, but whole life policies in general, because of the internal performance of whole life policies, meaning the growth is guaranteed, but the cost of you leveraging your dollar amount, 9 times out of 10, the cost to borrow your money, the cost to use your money is higher than what is being made inside the policy. And as a result, it makes it almost impossible for you to be able to take income. You would need to have a policy that's been growing on its own untouched for a certain period of time before you could adequately take income and it not eat up the policy.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Real quick. It's around the idea of income, the cash value, the whole point of having a whole life policy and the cash value initially was to use it before you pass away, because inherently they are usually not designed for you to continue pass on that cash value. The insurance company then absorbs that cash value unless you pay even more money to add a rider. Is that correct? Where you would then be able to, but that's increasing the cost because at its base, it does not include that. Correct?
That's where structure matters, because you're right. There are some policies out there that, again, how it's designed, as I contribute money into this policy and I build cash value, my actual death benefit levels off, which means the life insurance I'm buying reduces as my cash value increases. So basically what's happening here is it looks as though the life insurance company is keeping my cash value if something were to happen to me, when in truth, it's just a rebalance of the life insurance and the cash value. Moral of the story is you're still correct. And that is, if you don't want that to happen, a lot of times people will pay these paid up additions rider to compensate for that, but you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, because it should be in addition to, you're already purchasing this amount and you have cash value. And so this is also another way, no different than a Roth, right? That if you borrow from your policy and you put that money back in to make it whole, right? Then that should be to your benefit.
That's it. And that's where structure matters, because if we can ask better questions around this strategy, we can make sure we're not falling prey to a product that's not performing or not doing what we expected it to.
One last comment was around, and this is the only instance I'm going to say name names because I feel like it's so significant, no different than like Dave Ramsey. There's other I'll teach you to be rich, Rameth or whatever his name is. And there was this blog that I ran across, and we love it when you guys send us stuff because then we get to address it because it is very confusing. And he had said that he does not believe in whole life or IUL or cash value permanent life insurance at all because of the fees. Those of you who have been here, those of you, we're just going to take a moment for this person who seemed to have misunderstood the math when he did not do the math on fees on 401k, because that's where he's telling people to put their money is with a money manager with a 401k. But we know that if people would not have done that, if boomers would not have done that, if the silent generation who then switched over into 401k, right? Because remember, it was like they were on their way out from the factories and the corporations having to deal with all of this stuff. The 401k was like, look, you can do it yourself now, DIY. It was like 5-minute crafts back in the day, financial crafts. That's essentially what it was. And then this whole new industry was born of managers to manage, but it's only 1 or 2%. But in the end, it ended up robbing people. When you do the math, watch the retirement gamble. They break down the math. We don't even need to do it here. But what you need to see is when they do the math and they go to these, the CEOs of these financial institutions, and they say, here's the math. What do you have to say about it? And they're stumbling, and they've been so focused on 1 or 2% that they would never have acknowledged that they have taken 19 years from people. 2/3, 19 equals 19 years, that they could have retired 19 years sooner if it weren't for the fees. So you tell me, because that's 19 years they had to work in order to have enough just to be able to stop working. They couldn't benefit before then. Right. And that's the saddest part, is that there's someone, I'll teach you to be rich, but you're putting and work 19 years longer 2 decades.
And that's where, like, I appreciate the questions, because what I hear when you say, hey, I don't like life insurance, don't put your money in life insurance, put it in a 401k. And the reason I don't want you to put your money in life insurance is because I don't like the fees.
I don't like the fees. That's what he said.
But
Yeah.
now, this is where, okay, I have a question. I understand you don't like the fees in life insurance, because that's fair, especially if you can't see what the fees are. So let's finish the sentence. So what are the fees inside of a 401k?
What are the, yeah, right.
Show me the fees inside, show me the breakdown of the fees inside the 401k. Again, we have to do a better job of questioning our subject matter experts, because in essence, we're just being sold a product.
And that's what I think that's probably one of my favorite lines out of that documentary, is that the 401k is the most expensive product, is the only product that Americans are sold and commonly buy, and they don't even know the cost of it.
That's it. That's it.
They never know the price of what it is they're actually buying.
And let me throw this in here, because you guys know I'm self-directed, right? You guys know that we build self-directed IRAs and self-directed 401ks. So here's where you get to ask the question. I know what the cost of a 401k is. The issue is, it's not the 401k that's the problem.
Right.
So the gentleman is right. If you want a place to put your money, a 401k is a great place to put it. The 401k is not the problem. The 401k didn't arbitrarily come up with these fees. The fees were placed into this 401k by who? The custodian, the company that holds your 401k, the bank that holds your 401k, in conjunction with the company that you work for that negotiated these fees inside of your company's 401k. Is it possible that you can remove the fee structure of that bank or custodian and restructure the ownership of that 401k? You absolutely can. Can you use a bank that charges zero or little to no fees? You absolutely can. Can you get your 401k out of the market that it's tied to, that impacts your ability to grow and beat the 4% rule or outperform 8% or whatever that? Absolutely you can, but this is where asking better questions comes into play.
Yeah, because you can use your self-directed 401k to invest in real estate and all kinds of non-traditional investment types.
Right, and eliminate the requirement, because just be clear, all 401ks are the same. 401ks are trusts. Trusts have their own EIN number. Trusts do not require custodial support. So if you've got a 401k with your employer and that 401k is tied to some custodian, it's not the 401k's fault. It's because that's what your employer chose to do. Is there a better way? And why can't I take my current employer's plan and make that better way? Well, you can always ask. It's called an in-service transfer, but that's for another day.
But you don't own it. That's really
You don't own
did I
it, but
did I
you
say the
can
quiet
own it.
part out loud?
No, you're right. You don't own it, but you can, but you do have to request. You have to request from your employer the ability to be able to do so. And like I said, it's called an in-service transfer.
Pfizer has another question, says, if used for retirement, can either strategy allow to withdraw money from the policy without paying back after having let it grow for a long time? So can you take income from either one, whole life or IUL, as retirement income? Can you withdraw money? That's a key phrase here.
You know,
Yep.
my ears picked up.
And I'll let you, without paying it back after a while.
Yeah, so I'll try to answer mind putting it back up? Put the question back up. I'll try to answer it in pieces. The first is this. When you have cash value life insurance, when you have cash value in whether it's a whole life, an IUL, a VUL, a UL, it doesn't matter the type of cash value life insurance policy. When you have cash value, how you take distributions from that policy matters. Cash value life insurance policies are policies that grow tax deferred. So if you want to maintain that tax deferment, you never want to withdraw money from a policy. But I understand what it is you're trying to say. You're trying to take income. How do I get income out of my policy? Well, if you work with any life insurance person and they use the word withdraw, run, because that is taboo. Because withdraw implies you will now be paying tax on anything above your basis in that policy. So we do not want to withdraw. In addition, if you withdraw from your policy, you're actually depleting the cash value in the policy, which means you have less. So how do we take income if we're not withdrawing? So I use the term distribution. How do we take distributions from our life insurance policy? Whether it's whole life or variable life. I'm sorry, whole life or index universal life, leveraged IUL. How do we take distributions? And you kind of said it. You want to have cash value that's large enough to where as you take distributions from that cash value, you're placing that policy in a position where you don't have to pay it back. So let me give you a scenario. Let's say you've got $1 million in cash value. $1 million, and you've allowed this policy to build up to a point where you now have $1 million sitting as cash value in your policy. How do you take distributions to make sure you don't have to pay that back? Well, what's the cost of the distribution? If I have $1 million in cash value and it costs me 5% to borrow income from that policy, but the growth in the policy is 4%, that means every time I take a distribution of 5% out of that $1 million, it costs me -1% inside my policy, which means depending on how long I live, I could be eating up that cash value and losing money in the policy. But what if every time I go to take a distribution from my policy, I take 10%? But the growth inside my policy is 13%. Meaning, internally in my policy, it's making 13%. I'm taking a distribution of 10. Let me say it again. Internally, inside my policy, I am making 13% on the $1 million that's in my policy. And every time I take a distribution, meaning I borrow 10% from my policy, made 13, borrowed 10, made 13, borrowed 10. I am borrowing less than I'm making. So what is there to pay back? If I made 13% on $1 million, which is 130,000, and I borrowed 10%, which is 100,000, I now owe that $100,000 back. But if I made 130,000, I've already paid back what I borrowed plus an additional 30,000. So my account is continuing to grow. My cash value is continuing to grow while I'm able to take a 10% distribution. So you're right. You have to have more cash value, or you have to have enough cash value for that math to make sense. But it's all rooted in this. What is the growth inside my policy, and is the dollar amount that I'm borrowing or leveraging or taking a distribution from my policy, am I taking something less than what I'm actually making?
Okay, Carlos has a good question. So now we talked about how money comes out, but let's talk about how money goes back into the policy. Carlos says, if I put money twice in a month, different dates, would the point-to-point change for that particular month?
So, and the annual, and so for those, I think I have to give the backstory here. So how does money grow in a policy? So in an IUL, in a properly structured IUL, and again, I'm using an scenario of putting in $500 a month. I put in $500 a month into my policy. When I put that $500 in month one into my policy, the call option that's done using the S&P 500 index that we kind of talked about, that call option does not happen. If I put it in January 1, that call option on that $500 doesn't happen February 1. That's not when it happens. That call option happens on December 31st. So if it's January 1 of 2025, the call option for that $500 doesn't occur until December 31st, 2025. So it's annual point to point. So what he's asking is, if he puts in $250 on January 1 and then $250 on January 15th, does that now create two separate call options. It's annual point to point for that month. And so the answer would be no. And actually, I think because of the way I said it, it would actually force that second $250 into February. But my point is the annual point to point call option happens based off the amount that you put in for that month.
All right. So you want to finish the points?
Yep. I have one last item. The one last item is this piece down here at the bottom. Again, what have we learned? There's a way to have your money working in three places. And what does that look like? And it's the triple compounding of your money. What it looks like is I have an IUL that is generating somewhere between 7 to 10% growth inside my policy. Then I'm leveraging I'm leveraging the dollar amount that I've contributed starting in year 3, and I'm putting that dollar amount back into my policy, and that leveraged dollar amount yields a return. So there's a growth on the dollar amount I've contributed, there's growth on the leveraged dollar amount that I've put in, and then when I take those dollar amounts out, when I borrow against my policy and I do infinite banking, I take that dollar amount out and I use it to buy real estate, buy a business, pay off debt, whatever it is. There's an opportunity for me to make a spread there. So I'm able to generate a positive return here, here, and here. So it's allowing my money to be working in 3 different places at the same time, allowing me to build compound interest on all three of those points. So it's the triple compounding of your money. If you had an opportunity to put money in a position to where it could make money in 3 different places, why wouldn't you do it? If this was a whole life policy, what is different about this structure as it relates to whole life? It's you don't have this. So it's money working in 3 places versus money working in 2. Which is better? And again, we have not gone over any math associated with how that would work. I'm just talking structure. If you had money working in 3 places versus money working in 2, which is better? So when we're talking about infinite banking and whether or not we should use a whole life versus an IUL, again, what I'm pleading with you is we do a better job of asking better questions, because it's not that you can't do something. The better question to ask is what structure needs to be in place, what conditions need to be met in order for us to do it. That makes sense. So that's it, sweetheart. I am all done.
Okay. Coming back over here?
I can.
All right. You got to beat it.
I won't.
Beat the transition. Here we go. Wish them luck, guys.
If I run and I fall, the comedy would be me tripping over this chair. So I refuse.
But what goes on behind here sometimes, y'all, is probably entertaining to some people. Like one time the glass got knocked over, I had to clean up a mess. I'm back here fighting for my life with towels and grabbing stuff, wouldn't I?
You are a hell of a producer. Because I say a lot of words, but the function of this show is really dependent upon you. And you're absolutely correct. There are things going on that a lot of times you guys have no idea. And she's all by herself. There's just us.
Right.
So when I'm at the vibe board, she's running, she's answering comments, she's finding questions, she's like
plugging and unplugging the vibe board.
Man, so you do a hell of a job as a producer of this show. Again, my job is just to sit here, look pretty, and say words.
No, the teamwork makes the dream work. And that goes for everybody who joins us on these live streams too. You're part of the team that's getting educated so that you can go out there and say, hey, when you hear somebody talking about this stuff, that's what makes it worth it. And we sincerely believe that we grow faster and farther when we grow together. And it takes more than just us, right? It takes our community too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we appreciate all of you, especially hold on. Shout out to Sequoia. She's been the like button cheer squad the whole time. She's like security in the chat, like patting people down. Have you hit the like button? All right. Then you can come in. We appreciate you so much. We have one more question.
do it.
Pfizer says that distribution sounds only possible with leveraged IUL if I got it right, since the positive spread is impossible with whole life.
So notice, like, so now that you've listened to this, like you've spent 2 hours with us going through this, when you hear people talk infinite banking, listen to how often they say distribution. Listen to how often they say take income. Listen to how often they say supplemental income. Most people who educate around infinite banking acknowledge the fact that income is going to be a challenge. So, can you leverage the cash value in your policy to go buy a property, buy a business, and build wealth externally outside the policy? Absolutely, you can. But the likelihood of that whole life policy being in a position to where it can be used as income is going to be a challenge. So to your point, it seems like the distribution can only happen inside of a leveraged IUL. That's not true, but it will be a challenge. So how do you do it? And again, speaking from my own experience, we have a whole life policy. When I learned, this information was provided to me, and again, as an engineer, my job is to break it and put it back together. When I figured out how this thing works, what I realized is my whole life policy, if I want to be able to use it for a vehicle that I can take distributions when it's ready, I can't touch it. Like, I can't borrow against it, have outstanding loans excessively because I'm building negative arbitrage inside of my policy. So if I use it, I'm using it for a specific reason, for a specific period of time. I know the amount of time I'm going to have it, the return I'm going to have on it, so I can immediately put it back together so I can continue compounding. So if I just allow the policy, I still contribute to it. It's not a lot, but I still contribute to it. If I allow the policy to continue compounding, it's building more cash, like it has more cash value and it's building at a consistent rate. It's guaranteed growth. Like I got all of that stuff. But because I'm not pillaging it, it's allowed to perform. At some point, I will be able to take income from it. I will be able to take distributions from it as income, but I have to be strategic. Whereas with an properly designed index universal life insurance policy, it's not that complicated because the structure allows you to be able to generate and build wealth faster. And it allows you to put your cash value in a position to where if you're taking distributions as income, you don't run out because it's more easily done inside of an index universal life insurance leveraged IUL. It just makes that process easier. So I think you're right in both ways, meaning it's not only an IUL, but you just have to be realistic about how much of a distribution you can take because you don't want to create a negative arbitrage position inside your policy.
And the whole point, though, is what the goal is. Where you're going, right? What's the goal? If the goal is to have a death benefit at the end of the day that you can pass on, then I think there are a lot of products that can offer that. Yeah. If the goal is to make sure that you have a particular amount of income and that you have access to leverage when it matters most, I think we should just do a stream on that, period. It's not because I like to rant about this stuff. It's because it's really important. It is important, though. Yeah, but I also like to rant about it. Exactly. And it's not just for our kids' generation, right? It's also for our parents' generation. At some point, we become them. Right now, if you aren't aware of the silver tsunami and that community that is on the rise, it is around assisted living facilities. And there's a reason why that this investment class in particular is blowing up. If you think it's to provide care for people, you're wrong. If you think that people are really caring about making sure that seniors have a place to go because there's going to be so many of them and such a need, you're wrong. We already have a deficit in the amount of care and what's required. And then in between that are all of the legislative moves that have continued to happen to make sure that seniors are properly cared for because it is so profitable. And when I say it's so profitable, imagine this: 1 bedroom with a twin bed and a nightstand in a assisted living facility on average is $5,000 a month. Now, I'd love for you to think that you could stay in your home for the rest of your life. But the truth is, when you get to any point when you have to have better options like this, when you have to have an opportunity to be allowed to have access to the care that you prefer. How about that? Not just the care that you have access to, care you prefer. Would you prefer to stay home? Then you're going to need to pay for that. You're going to need that income. Do you prefer to have your caregivers be your children, or is that your only option and did they want to be? Because the bad care isn't just happening inside of these care facilities, right? We have to consider these things. I could go on, but we have to consider these things because by the time we realize, oh crap, we don't have any options, it's too late. You can't go back. You have no compound cycles. You cannot leverage time in the same way. So I have to say that it's really tied to the goal. If income, which it should be, income should be in everybody's goal, right?
Right. I agree.
If income is not a part,
Income.
passive tax-free income is not a part of your goal, put it in there today. Write it down, add to cart. That's what you want. You're going to make sure that it gets delivered to you. You are going to take the steps to make sure that you have tax-free passive income for the rest of your life and that you have access to leverage so that you have access to options, including care when you need it or a loved one needs it, right? And I think this is where the family bank conversations, we've done those a lot. They can play a big part in this too.
I think you bring up something so important because there's not an infinite number of options out there to produce passive tax-free income. There's not. So you're right. If you when you look at your portfolio and if your portfolio does not have some passive tax-free options in it, that's a shift that needs to happen quickly. And let's be clear, your company's retirement account may not be it. So what are those opportunities where you can generate and build a tax-free passive income? And again, the list is not extensive. Like there's a handful of items. Like crypto technically is not it. Now, there's some things that we can do that I can show you that may help with that. But the bottom line is, what are those vehicles? And are you participating in them? And if not, why? What is preventing you from doing so? Because it goes back to that wealth equation. What's the number one factor to generate and build wealth? You have to pay yourself first. So when you assess your portfolio and you assess those vehicles that you're currently putting your money in, where are you paying yourself first so that you can generate and build passive tax-free income?
Thank you so much for this feedback, by the way. We love that feedback. It helps us keep going and knowing that we're doing a good job or that at least the value that we're trying to put down is being picked up. That's important to make sure we're effective. Fernando says, when you were running over here, if you fall, good thing you got that rider in your life insurance.
Man, one of my fears is not the fall. It's not the fall. What I picture is falling and hitting my tooth, and I lose a
Not
tooth.
the tooth.
I'm telling you, that is like dreams. I wake up in the middle of the night having a dream where I lost a tooth, and it's like, oh my God, and I'm freaking out. Like that is a.
And then you wake up, and I'm like, where's your tooth?
But can you imagine? Because if I fall, I'm gonna get back up, and we will finish the show.
Yeah,
we're going to finish the show. But
we
I
will.
can hear Rob now. Like, I will not be able to look at the comments. God forbid if I was to ever fall, because y'all funny. But Rob go in, man.
You know what he said? And I said, I'm not going to say it. I looked in the chat later. He was like, say it, Angelique, choose violence.
And Peaky, don't let Peaky be in the chat.
Oh, right.
Oh, my God.
Right.
But that is an absolute fear that I will end up falling.
Well, we have a great time with you guys and just showing up here and spending time with us. We hope that we have made the time worth it for sure. But we hope that this information, don't hold on to this information just for yourself. Please share it out with someone. And if you have further questions, more questions, what did I do with that? Well, anyhow, we're about to roll where you can go to book an appointment, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, all consultations are free. Bring your questions. and just sit down so that they can be about you and your situation and how it applies. Sometimes people aren't, they're not super excited about sharing their situation or asking those types of questions in a live stream chat. And we understand that. That's what it's there for. selfdirected.info/live. It should be down in the description below as well. And that is where you can book a call.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we like to end with, if you didn't come from, well, hold on. Let me find my thing.
No problem.
And restarting. Okay. We know that time is the most valuable asset that we have, and we are so glad that you spent your time here with us. We like to end all of our streams with, if you didn't come from a wealthy family,
You can make sure a wealthy family comes from you.
so stay tuned,
Stay protected.
stay focused.
Stay connected.
I'm Angelique,
And I'm Donnell.
and our goal is to help you.
As always, get self-directed.
And to do that, we have a ton of free resources. So hang on here and we'll play it for you. And we will see you back here next Tuesday, 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Hey, before you go, we want to remind you that becoming fully self-directed means gaining complete control over your wealth, time, and freedom. It's not just an idea. It's a framework, a mindset, and the power to make informed decisions to secure your future. Being here means you're taking those steps, and we want to thank you for allowing us to guide you. We believe that we grow farther and faster when we grow together. So tune in next time and tell a friend to tell a friend. We've helped thousands of people just like you start their journey to financial freedom. And if they can do it, you can too. And if you're ready to learn more, we got you. Get a head start by grabbing these 2 free books. But how do they get them, Donnell?
Head over to my website where you'll have access to a few things. A ton of free resources, case studies, and over 100 5-star reviews from people just like you. And in 15 minutes, we can explore what's possible for you. So don't wait.
Invest in what you want, when you want.
But first, let us help you
Get self-directed.